very complimentary.
The secondary.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone's here? Yes. Okay, so I'd like to call this village board meeting back to order. It is 9:13. Everybody's had their bodily break. All right, so we're moving on to 9B. Consider meeting date for presentation of final transportation and parking analysis. Rebecca.
So we're going to be getting back a final draft of the analysis, and we could either do this at a committee of the whole on February 3rd, or we were perhaps suggesting a special meeting of the board the week of January 27th, which would take place on Thursday, January 30th, because we may want to invite everyone from the public to hear the presentation, and it may go a bit longer. It can just be a long night for you guys all at one time.
So when we did the Wilson Drive presentation at the end, before the vote, we went to the Village Center. It felt right to be in that kind of atmosphere.
That's where this is supposed to be.
Okay.
Yep. On Thursday nights, we reserve that room for village activities. So if you wonder sometimes why we're like looking at Thursdays, because we know it's already reserved for us, so we don't have to clear it or try to juggle events. And then, you know, we can advertise it. You know, there's been a lot of interest regarding it. We want to make it clear and open to people. And then if we did this on the 30th, then it's our desire to come back to you on February 3rd and just lay out some options in terms of different ways you could, as a board, proceed. You may decide something else, but just suggest some options.
The trustee part
feels good. I mean, yeah, the 30th feels good to me. I just, what time are you thinking?
6?
Yes, I want to say it was 6
6:30.
o'clock. I'm sorry if that's not in here.
Oh, I didn't see it, sorry.
No, you're right, it's not in here. I think the discussion was 6 o'clock.
Is 6:30 better, or is there a reason for 6? You said 6:30, I'm just wondering.
Just my own life.
I'm just wondering.
I'm
Well,
open.
at 6:30, and there's a reason, because everyone can eat them.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd say 6:30.
6:30, okay. We'll plan on 6:30 then.
okay. 6:30 on the 30th.
Just a motion to that effect.
I have one, before we get a motion, yes?
I was gonna make a motion, but.
Oh, I just have one other question about that. I think, I haven't read all the recommendations yet, but just so there's clear understanding of what the intent of the presentation is for the public, we'll have that discussion before it happens, is that what you said? Or after? So they're gonna present their recommendations, but I know from reading a few and having some discussion with you that there are some, like, that may need further public, like, before we implement any of those, this isn't the final, like, here's all the recommendations, like, how does that, we need to structure that conversation.
Right, so that's what we would start discussing with you on February 3rd.
So before it happens.
After it happens.
So I'm thinking just for the presentation, I would like to have, even if it's just you and I or whoever would like to pursue, but just structuring that presentation so that the public is aware of what that means. Because there are a lot of recommendations in there that we may choose not to go forward with. And there's a lot that we may, but we need more public involvement in. And so I just want to make it really clear before we just throw out these recommendations with the public there, that what is the intent here and what is the next steps. So I almost want it reversed, which is, do you have any thoughts about these recommendations or something like in next steps? I don't know.
I just want to say, I agree with that. There's a lot of kind of there's some big recommendations there that I don't want to get the impression that we've somehow adopted these and this is we're communicating it to you because this is happening. So if we can make clear in the communication, these are not adopted, this is just the kind of the final draft and what the recommendations are, and we will consider them afterwards.
Yes.
I just think we want to be really
Yeah.
clear.
And that there will potentially be more public involvement. Like, so we had said, like even changing overnight parking, if that, that was recommended, just say. We need more public, just so people are aware that would be happening and if that's what we adopt eventually or decide to implement. So something to the effect of what is this meeting, we're presenting recommendations, what is it? And what could follow. So, okay. That was it on that topic. Anything else? If not, you can go ahead with your motion.
I move to approve a special committee of the whole meeting on Thursday, January 30th for presentation of the final transportation parking analysis.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
that's presentation by the consultant to the board, not the village's. I mean, this is the
That's my point.
consultant reporting out the recommendation to the village board.
Is it? That was my exact
Yeah,
point
yes.
here. It's not also to the public?
So,
Well,
I mean,
also to the public.
Is it-
It's a public meeting.
right.
I know.
We're always, I guess, I can like kind of come from a place where we're always presenting to the public, but I don't anticipate any action at that night. It's
Well, if
just
it was just the board, so the semantics to me mean something that you might not understand.
Okay.
So if it was a presentation just to the board, then I feel like we could just sit in our seats. But like Wilson Drive, when we had a presentation, it was more a presentation to the public and the board together, which was a different feeling for me. Like, it was more of a public meeting on it to present recommendations rather than presenting just to the board. I don't know how to
We can
explain
just
that.
do a public meeting too, if that works.
I mean, it could be the same, I just feel like.
Just do a public meeting.
I mean, are you then looking?
We're not adopting it, are we?
Right, no, I mean,
No.
I think for Wilson Drive, there was a vote that was being taken that night. I mean, well, it depends on which one you're
Which
talking
night.
about, but, you know, I mean, I think that I think we just need to know that the public that are gonna be there are gonna probably want to, or we need to be prepared that they may want
They're
to
gonna have
give us
questions and-
feedback and their questions
Right, I
based
just-
on, you know, the recommendations. And, I mean, I think we need to be clear that we're not acting on
Are we
any of those recommendations that night. It's just to hear it, and it's for them to hear, for the public to hear it at the same time as the board.
Okay, so
But I
just
mean,
give
we
me
take
some guidance.
comments from the public at regular meetings. I'm not clear what the difference is. I mean, it's a board meeting, it's a public meeting, it's, you know, it's a lip chopping and a floor wax.
Okay, so, but he made the comment very specific, it's to the board, and I just wanted to be clear for my role. Yes, it's to the board, but I would probably classify it more as a public meeting as well and allow comments if need,
Are
so.
you talking a public hearing?
No, because it's not, we're not
Public
adopting
meeting,
it.
every meeting is a public
I
meeting.
understand, but we also try to limit the time that they speak and, you
No,
know.
we don't. When did we
Well, we
decide
don't-
we're limiting public comment?
Okay, well anyways, so the intent for myself, unless I hear differently, would be to entertain questions from the public, as many as there are.
Yeah.
Okay,
However, we will need to
Right.
leave the building at 8 o'clock.
so that's why.
Because it closes at that time.
So does Village Hall, but,
Can't we close it ourselves?
what do you mean, because we rent it to someone? No, the senior center is ours. It falls under the village, doesn't it?
I don't know, an hour and a half.
No, it's not gonna be enough if we take public comments.
So let's do it. Let's do it.
I prefer it there. I know it's, when we did Wilson Drive, it went over.
Yeah, we've had meetings after.
Like, and then we had the CPA and we've had meetings after, right?
Yeah.
Program doors.
Yeah.
Okay, let me look at this map.
Is the consultant gonna, I mean, the consultant is reporting, answering questions from the board and the public if they have questions.
That's my point.
I mean, this is just, I view this would be like just a report and the kickoff to the whole communications consideration process.
Yeah, I thought that's what you meant, yeah.
You
Is this
could be there for hours
Are
at a
they
time.
draft,
Right.
is this their draft or their final?
They're final.
So we're accepting it. We're not voting on it, but,
Right.
okay. Because implementation comes next, it's a great opportunity for the public to be able to have questions, and if they had a comment or something on one of the recommendations, that they share it then. So I do feel it's more than I think what Trustee Maher was indicating, and that's why I wanted to just talk about it with the rest of us. Are we okay with entertaining more public comment than would be expected at a board meeting? I
I'm
am.
good with it.
Trustee Manta?
I mean,
Is-
I don't understand the question, because like we have sometimes we have a lot of people here, and there's a lot of public comment, and we usually let everybody speak. Or
Okay.
we haven't limited public comment, so
Okay.
why would we do it there?
Oh, Trustee Mata?
Yeah,
You're good?
that's fine. We should be clear with the consultant what their role is in
Yeah.
accepting this they're done, and they're essentially
Yeah.
reporting out. So it's the comments are to us, or this,
Yeah.
say,
I would just, I mean, I made this comment to Bart to them, but I mean, their executive summary is like, that table is just, I mean, they need to have a much more concise, like, one
Yeah.
page, like, here are the main takeaways. I mean, having that really long, involved, I mean, it's good to have the detail, but we also need a one pager that is the major takeaways of the report.
And the major I don't know if they've ranked them yet, I'm reading it tonight, but there's a lot in there. And so we have to take the next step, and I don't know what that next step is and how we're gonna organize that. And I know that's in February, we're gonna talk about that, but a consultant could definitely help to organize that a little better. Like into one, Trustee Menta did a great post on it, like highlighting the major things, so something like that would be helpful if we expect people to be there. All right,
In conclusion,
in conclusion,
because I just want to recap to make sure I heard it correctly, because I'm not sure I did. We want a public meeting at Village Center.
or just a board meeting, but open to the public, I guess. We can call it whatever you
Yeah,
want.
we can,
Public meeting sounds great.
It doesn't matter. Okay, at Village Center at 6:30. We'll take public comment and questions. The consultant will be prepared to that. It is the kickoff to a new communications process for advising on the next steps for the recommendations within this plan.
Which the consultant help us do, hopefully.
And with regards to public comments and questions, we've not utilized this, I don't believe we maybe at any of our meetings, but a lot of times you hand out note cards to people as they come in, so if they have questions, you can have them written down, submitted in, and then those can be asked. Particularly the group, I need that may be redundant.
Is there any way that these recommendations are grouped? Because maybe it's just which grouping do you want to speak on? And then you take them by groups, rather than every single comment or question? I don't know, I'll look at it tonight, I apologize.
I haven't seen the final,
Yeah,
the
okay.
final draft, or the final product, but
What about?
is there any desire to do that, or do
Yeah,
not?
you can leave cards there. I think people also come up with questions as their presentation goes. That's my hesitation about cards. Ahead of time, like saying, like the school district did for that, if you don't submit it ahead of time on your card, well, you might get a question halfway through.
We could wait until after. The only reason why I suggested maybe is because some of the presentations where that I've sat in recently, there seems to be a lot of interjection with questions. So I didn't know if you wanted to wait until the end to allow them to ask their questions.
Yeah, and with no cards, so they can write them down. Yeah, that was
Maybe it's not, I just,
depending on how they structure their presentation, correct?
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Wait till the end.
Wait.
I would
I
wait,
think they should get.
or by section, if
Well,
they
you
were
know, one
grouped.
question, do they, I mean, we've done things before with boards, and people can walk and look at boards. And that might be a way to let people sort of mingle a little bit. And, you know, maybe if we start at 5:30 with the boards up and people can come and look and informally ask questions, then start the formal meeting, then they do their presentation, we get to ask our questions, and then however many questions we have time.
That's definitely a public meeting rather than a board meeting, and I don't disagree with you, but that was not included in their scope to make boards, correct?
wasn't aware that there were had intentions to make boards.
No.
But I do
Well,
like,
just threw it out.
Yeah,
Right,
I do
think
like
that's
that.
an idea.
that, and the other thing is, as you look at those recommendations, if there's groupings, like these are all for the business district, or these are all for overnight parking, or then it makes it easier that you don't have to wait for an hour presentation to ask any questions. You could stop after a grouping and ask questions. That, to me, makes it more efficient. People forget, or they get antsy, they can't stay the whole meeting, so they'll be better. And then the note cards just to have on hand so they can jot down as they go would be helpful too.
We'll work that out.
Okay.
Thank you for your input.
Anything else? Boards would be great. I don't know if there's money or if they're willing to do that, but that would be helpful too. All right. Do we need to make a motion?
We have a motion, we just need to vote.
Motion by
Trustee Warren.
Trustee Warren, seconded by
Trustee Carpenter.
and you'll read.
To approve the special committee of the whole meeting on Thursday, January 30th for a consultant presentation of the final transportation parking analysis at 6:30 p.m.
And do we want to call a committee of the whole?
Motion second, yeah, motion second committee of the whole, but I'm perfectly willing to change it if we decide it's more of a public hearing.
Just say village board clubs.
Special village
Maybe
board.
it's
Special.
whole.
Because we're not taking action.
Oh,
Yeah, let's go, committee of the whole.
that's a good idea.
Okay, sounds fine, just want to make sure. All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. All right, next item on our agenda is number 10, reports of village officials. Village president. I don't have one at the moment. Village trustees. Trustee Carpenter.
I just have that the North Shore Mountain Demand Action 2020 kickoff meeting is on January 14th at 3 Lions at 7 o'clock. So they're doing a recap of 2019, what they accomplished, and then what they are looking to accomplish in 2020.
What time?
7 p.m. So, if anybody wants to attend, I think it should be a good meeting and help. We're really looking to try and recruit new members for 2020, and you do not have to be a mom or a woman. It's really people demand action. So,
Excellent. Any further trustee reports? All right, we'll move on to village manager.
Included within your packet is a memo that details the state mandated housing affordability report and new housing fee report, which is new this year, and it was prepared by our housing study consultant, Noah Broderick. It's located within there with links to questions. It's also been posted on our website. So it's mandated that annually we provide the report now to the board. So this is delivering that to you. So you can anticipate receiving it this time annually, moving forward.
Excellent.
Yep.
And we've seen this every year. I thought we,
It's a new requirement. Yep, the new state mandate.
all right.
Next up, I just wanted to give a brief update on our next steps for.
Oh, wait, one more question, I apologize. There also is something that we always do, we're supposed to do every year, Mark knows about it, on housing, and it's something with the county. The CBDG area, even though we don't get funds, we're required to report on it. And so typically, when I asked before, Mark would say that there was a spreadsheet he did, you know, with like a sentence, but I just wanted to make you aware of that. Okay. Because it'd be great to also just review whatever it is. Okay, sorry about that.
So I just wanted to give you a brief status on a property at 2010 Jarvis. There's been several email communications that we've provided to the board regarding this property. Over the last 30 years, it has been a documented and reported property that has been in poor condition, of which we routinely receive inquiries and levels of concern from neighbors or people within the area. Just to give a brief recap, we, after decades of communication and diligence in attempting to communicate with the property owner, the village actually last year took the matter to circuit court to try to get some positive resolution. And so in those efforts and through those inspections, the property was rendered uninhabitable. There is a large hole in the roof, which has grown larger over the last 6 months and now extends through a secondary hole within the second floor of the structure, which has been allowing in rain and wildlife for a period of time now. The court did order that the structure is uninhabitable. And so the resident has been provided that order of direction. I need to relay that the Milwaukee County Behavioral Health Division, as well as Department of Health, has been extremely and actively engaged in this case, I would say on a daily basis, for the last several months, and continues to be. The property owner has been communicated to very directly with the judge and has been clearly communicated to in terms of the terms and the offers of help that have been provided to this individual. And they have not been welcomed by the individual or taken on multiple occasions. So, Milwaukee County has had reach out from some of the neighboring property owners, because the resident has communicated that we aren't providing any options or alternatives to their current circumstances. And the county has reinforced to me that we really need to advise people to have her take them up on the resources that they are offering and providing, because they do believe that while this case is open at this point in time, that is the best way to get this individual the help that they need. So that will continue. I know that the property and the home is currently in the hands of a receiver that has been appointed by a Milwaukee County Circuit Judge. That receiver did try to work towards rehabbing the property and was unable to do so with contractors under the terms provided with the judge. So we will be back to hear what the court provides as its next steps with the property on January 10th.
We didn't foreclose on the property, right? It just was the courts out of our hands. Was it municipal court? Was it?
No, it's circuit court.
Circuit court, okay, so
And it was,
make that distinction.
right, and it was, part of the problem, the immediate threat was there was, with the holes in the roof and then going down through the second floor bedrooms, there was some exposed wiring that would have potentially caused a massive fire and could have taken down the whole block if the utilities weren't shut off and the place secured and the resident asked to leave. So it's a horrible situation in terms of the human, aspect of it. But we've actively worked with the health department for years and elder services in Milwaukee County to try to offer services. It's also a hoarding situation. They had difficulty getting, the inspectors had difficulty getting in and getting to where they needed to see and get to be when they executed the inspection warrant. The resident has some resources, was actually renting the upper unit next door for years and years because she ran out of space basically for her stuff. And we've documented with Milwaukee County other income, and there's been family members that have reached out and she's just said no. And unfortunately there was a period of time a number of years ago where there was citations in circuit court, and I worked with an attorney that she had hired. The attorney opened up a dedicated escrow account and placed money into the escrow account to hire contractors. And then it came down to it, and there were bids that were received, and the owner refused to sign any of the contracts and fired the attorney, and we were back to square one. And it's horribly unfortunate. What I'm hoping happens is that the property can be sold, because if it's worth more even with one wall standing than it is if it's raised, because it's a non-conforming lot. And then if it's raised down to nothing, you'll have to comply with all existing building codes. Otherwise, it's a non-conforming.
Can you build on that lot
You could,
with the existing
but
codes?
it would be more. It's worth more if there's at least one wall standing.
Yes, we understand that concept.
I mean, somebody would buy it and rehab it, but the problem I foresee is I don't know that the owner will ever voluntarily relinquish or sell it. So the judge I think he has the inherent authority to order that.
So she's living next door, or?
I have no clue.
Oh.
She
was renting and next door, is that what you were saying?
She was renting it out. And then
I'm sorry, I apologize. So you're referencing back, no.
Yeah.
She was renting the next, there was a duplex immediately next door, and she was renting the upper, because she ran out of
Right.
space for her stuff.
she was renting
And
it.
right,
She was paying.
Oh, she was renting.
She's
it
not
to
renting
store.
anymore.
Right,
Yeah,
just to
not
store
to actually
her
live there. I understand. Okay.
things of the hoarding
Yep.
issue. My understanding is that she's no longer renting there. So there were things that were placed in the garage, and there were things that were placed in the yard, and so I don't know exactly what's going to happen there, but we've taken every step that we can to work actively with elder services in Milwaukee County to say, we want you to have a safe
Transition.
place to live, and so that, you know, if the house can be rehabbed, you know, that would be wonderful for all involved, but that's what we've been trying to work towards for years, and now it's past the point, I think it's past the point of no return, and maybe
What's the next court date?
the 10th, January 10th, and again, you know, there will be an active discussion with the court as to what the next step is going to be.
Yeah, it's gonna be what's on the docket for, what's that hearing aimed
The
at?
status.
Just a status update.
That's right, and we'll tell them, the emergency hearing was before a different judge, and then Toriak, who was our regular judge, because it was during the holidays, and he was on duty. But, he knows this, and he gave her, you know, he gave the owner several months and explained to her, look, you know, you can either hire these contractors and let them do the work,
Who took her to court?
or this is what we're gonna have, this is what we're gonna do.
I'm trying to figure out how we're involved beyond inspection. Did we take her, did we throw it into court?
What we did, when holes became apparent in the roof, we filed a petition that asked that it be declared a public nuisance.
Okay.
And in hopes that would spark the owner
I wrote this.
to basically alleviate the
That's how it
nuisance. And that would have been fine, that would have been wonderful. We've, you know, indicated we don't, you know, that's all we want, and,
So we're the
just don't complain. We're the petitioner.
petitioner, thank you.
And then we asked that the receiver be appointed, which the judge did do, and the only way that the receiver can do this, he can borrow against the equity in the home, or he can find a contractor that can do work and have a lien against the property, which sometimes works in a commercial situation, where you know the work's gonna be done right before a sale. Here, if the place gets fixed up, she might live there for another 20 or 30 years, and they're not gonna get paid. There was an opportunity to potentially borrow, she owns the home outright.
If
There's
they
no work
ordered it,
against it.
if the judge in this status hearing, but what role might we have to play in the future? Is it to foreclose?
Nope,
Okay.
the receiver would facilitate that and then get paid out of the proceeds.
Okay.
I still think that's the best because it would put money, there are tax liens against the property, which impeded his ability to borrow against the,
Oh, I see.
against the equity. And, you know, and given what's the state of the home and the hoarding situation, lenders were not jumping all over themselves to become involved.
So, sorry,
Go ahead, yeah.
last question, at the status on the 10th, what do we anticipate the next steps coming out?
Right,
What's gonna be moved forward there?
Well, the best scenario would be if the owner voluntarily agreed to allowing
Okay, but she doesn't.
the receiver to facilitate a sale, which would mean that the home would not be raised, and then the home, and which would put the most money back into her pocket, because after again, it's still worth more with something standing than.
What if she won't do that?
Yeah,
And if she doesn't, then that's where the rubber hits the road, and the judge may have to invoke his inherent authority, I think he has, under the statute, to probably direct, against her wishes perhaps, either the home to be raised or sold.
So that's not a foreclosure through the village, that is a court mandated,
It's a court mandated through the circuit court.
and then for tax reasons, do we ever what do we do if we don't get our back property taxes? Do we just write that off?
Well, there's a whole process for that through, that's totally separate. But what my understanding is, I looked at it and I talked to Mark, and apparently the property taxes can be not paid for a certain amount of time, and then the county initiates the foreclosure action. And apparently, the owner would go up to that line, like within a couple of days, whenever that was, and then taxes would get paid. That was traditionally.
So how many
there's,
years
you know,
are we out
there's
from that?
almost enough to, you know.
But I'm just saying, how
that's
many,
enough.
are we coming up to that point? Is it like every 7 years?
I don't think that there's anything in it, but yeah.
So I would think that, you know, my guess would be that if they end up selling the property, the receiver would then pay us our past taxes.
Right, absolutely.
My other question, this is my last question. So could the court, at the January 10th hearing, could the court order that the house be raised, or is that something that, you know, is that something where the action would have to be, they'd have to lay it over for another hearing? Can the judge take action at that hearing, or is that more of a?
I think there's enough evidence in the record that if he wanted to do that, I think he could.
Okay.
Could we see it all? To raise it? What else would make it?
Well, there's a couple of factors that are going to be at play. I really, really hope that the owner comes with representation, because it makes things a lot easier when you're dealing lawyer to lawyer with the court, as opposed to someone that's representing themselves pro se. If that happens, I believe that, you know, a lawyer may be able to impress upon the owner that the only way that you're gonna come out of this with, you know, the best way you come out of this is if it's sold as is, as opposed to a lot being sold after it's raised. And that will put money in your pocket to seek other options, buy another house, or do whatever, as opposed to, but if we get to the point where, no, I will never ever agree to that, then a hard decision's gonna have to be made.
By the judge on January
By the
10th.
Is there a possibility, I mean, I'm guessing that this person has a lot of attachment to that particular house. So is there a possibility of fixing the roof and the wiring and making it habitable?
Well, she's gonna have to
It's her
voluntarily
property.
borrow against the equity of the home and do whatever needs to be done, and that's what the judge gave her the opportunity to do over the last year and a half, while this has been pending in circuit court. So, I would love that. I would think that that would be the greatest solution that it could be. But we may be past the point. And the other thing that I'm being told by the inspectors is, now that the utilities had to be shut off to prevent a potential fire because of the exposed wires through the holes in the roof, and then also crashing through the ceiling. But the other problem that comes with that, and the water was shut off, so there's no freezing pipes or anything. But the other problem that comes with that is now that there's nobody occupying the property, with the holes in there, it's gonna fill up with vermin and animals and other things pretty quickly. So the decision's gonna have to be made, to either sell it or tear it down.
Probably the next year, is what you're thinking.
So,
The taxes are owed to the county at this point, correct? Doesn't the county pay us already?
yeah.
It's not in Intercept yet. I thought you said she pays right before it goes into Intercept.
Well, that's an action by the county that will actually foreclose on the property if it.
Oh, through the county. I thought you meant.
Yeah, if they haven't paid, the county assumes that it pays us.
Okay. I didn't understand that.
I mean, it's a horrible, it's a no-win situation, but you know, if anybody asks, I mean, we've explored every creative option to work collaboratively with the owner to come up with a better solution than where we're at, but I can't, you know,
Both for our own
I
safety
can't
and
fix
health.
mental illness, and that's where we're at.
The behavioral health division had also, they were really, in the crisis division, who have both been active and out here, I feel like every day or every other day relative to this case, have really also emphasized that if you're in communication with neighbors who are allowing them to stay with them, that you encourage them to not allow that to happen. Just because it's prolonging a process of being connected with the most immediate resources. But then they've also seen in different circumstances that sometimes people will then kind of use the process of squatters' rights. And then additional people are kind of dragged into the process, which is I was unaware of all the technicalities that went with that, but that would all apply. And I think everyone here is wanting to help in the best way, but I didn't understand some of those ramifications as well.
And just so you know, after the judge issued the order, the property was boarded up. We had a contractor come in, and so that the vandals or kids going home from school, go, hey, let's go play at the haunted house, or you know, nobody can get in there. So at least so that it's secure, so that no one would get injured by trying to get on.
By the raccoons?
Well,
I mean, 'cause that's pretty very dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and there are neighbors that have children.
Yeah.
And we have gotten reports that there was, you know, pieces of roof and tile falling into the neighboring, on neighboring properties as well, which is a concern.
Any other questions for the attorney or Rebecca? Well, thank you so much for the update. We have next steps. Oh, no, that's it. So number 11 is items for future agenda. Do you have anything? I'm just going, I have not seen the future agendas, maybe when we review those, but minutes. We could push that up so we could talk about the agenda management as well. You know, it's gonna come before board, so.
Yeah, I wonder if we could have a summary of items.
We'd have to do that.
That'd be great. Chris used to do that every once in a while. That are on the
Yeah,
docket.
that people have brought up, because we seem to have, the last 2 meetings have been pretty skimpy on new business, and I just thought we had more on the docket that we were going
I think that the problem, if I'm not correct, Rebecca has expressed that committees are getting jammed up. So some of the things we put on future agenda can't get to committee. So if we're okay with doing it at like a board meeting, we could also have that option. But right now, the committees are pretty booked, is that correct? So I'll look at it and maybe make some suggestions, you can email it out. Okay. Then do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
to.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thanks, guys, great discussion.
This chair's.
Thank you for the chairs. They're really nice.
Love was present.